Welcome to Public Access Punks, Episode 6, where we're talking to Richard Bacchus from DGeneration about their first self-titled album. Richard Bacchus, thanks for joining us here at the Sandwich Shop.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you braved the snowpocalypse that wasn't today, and and made it up. So thanks. We're going to talk today about DGeneration.
Right.
DGeneration is a fantastically influential band from, let's just say, late 80s through mid 90s that a lot of people love. I love it. Scotty, who's here, loves you guys. And talk about your first album.
Right.
You know, your first we'll talk about very hard to find album.
Right.
And how that came about. We'll talk about the formation of the band, recording that album. You know, in New York, where you guys recorded it in the Village at Electric Lady, and talk a little bit about reaction to that album, what that album means to a lot of people, and just have a good time chatting about it. So again, thanks for coming. Tell me, DGeneration started in a really interesting time in New York City, I think, for popular music. You know, about the local kind of DIY music that's
yeah. I mean,
up.
it was like it was like kind of like New York always sort of led the way, and then I feel like in the 80s it lost that, and it was kind of like chasing like the LA, and like there was a lot of like the New York bands trying to be like hair metal, and cool bands, but just like they were just like on the back foot of what was, it wasn't cutting edge the way that New York had always been. And there was, there's the Cat Club, Scrap Bar, and there was all these scenes, and it was just like, it was kind of a weird place. Bands at the time coming up were like, there was the Throbs, so that's a great band, but like, just kind of like, trying to be like Aerosmith, trying to be like, this more like West Coast sort of thing. And we were just I was like kind of like more on the punk end of things. Howie had a band called the Freaks, which was sort of doing like a psychedelic, and those guys were really tight with like Soundgarden and that stuff. Like Soundgarden, I think, played their first show in New York opening for the Freaks. And Howie and Andrea Houston, the two of them were big on that scene. So yeah, we started out DJ. We did through this party where we DJ. We were sort of inspired by this thing to the Empire State Soul Club in New York, and with a bunch of DJs playing old R&B records, and it was just this huge, like, it was just crazy. I was trying to describe it to someone the other day. It's like you'd show up, there'd be like 3,000 people dancing to old R&B records.
Wow.
And we saw that, and we were like, oh, there needs to be like a rock and roll version of this.
Yeah.
And then also, playing like the B cuts, like, and deep cuts and stuff. And Howie was a very experienced DJ, and who went on to do Intoxica and stuff like that. Encyclopedic knowledge of like rock and roll and stuff. And then we just kind of would just play Bad Brains and have like 200 people dancing around to the Bad Brains. It's like there's just a really cool dance party. Primarily we pushed it as a dance party. It was like, you're gonna come and you're gonna dance. It's gonna be beer, dark room, and you can just go nuts. And then like I said, the people were like, bands started approaching us, like, hey, we want to play. Like, you got all these people, like, and we were like, oh, that's 20th century, like, rock and roll bands, like, like nobody wants to see a rock and roll band, like. And then, we were all, while we were doing the DJ thing, like, I was trying to start a band, Jesse was trying to start a band, Howie had the sort of like the Freaks were falling apart, and eventually it just all kind of melded together. We were like, hey, we can just everyone wants to play. Like let's just put together a band, and then we just kind of morphed together.
Sort of a bring your own crowd approach to
Right.
putting together a band.
Yeah.
So you guys all knew each other, though, kind of from the scene, from growing up. I mean, how'd you glom
it was have van will travel.
Yeah.
If you've got a van in New York, you immediately become an entrepreneur and a small business person because people got to move and people
Right.
got to get their shit to gigs, and it's like you can't take a bass amp on the subway, so it's like and that's how Jesse and I met. I had a van and he had a van, and his van would break down and my van would break down. We'd end up swapping vans, and that's pretty funny.
You formed a band out of a roadie relationship, is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
And you guys were in a bunch of different bands. You have this opportunity to basically turn your rent party into a happening with your band. What's your first performance like when you guys glom all that together?
The first show was really funny because it was just like we were just it wasn't serious at all. And I remember it's back then, people had VHS recorders, and just remember watching the footage afterwards and just being like, oh my God, like, we're having way too much fun. It just looks stupid.
So you knuckle down and start getting serious about
right,
it,
yeah,
right?
then you realize,
Yeah. So you guys start playing the local club scene. I mean, it's a weird time in the city, right? Because clubs are sort of closing down. You don't have a lot of live
we had
places.
like I say, we were roadies, so we had a strong relationship. Everyone at CB's knew us, and they knew when we walked in the door, we meant business, and we had our ins in everywhere.
Yeah.
And
so you curated your ins to start, I guess, rehearsing, performing. You guys are noted for hooking up with Giorgio Gameski, right?
Right. That was his space that we used for our house party, and that was really funny because we'd trash the place, then have to go in the next day and clean it all up, like just broken bottles and just mop up all the spilt beer and stuff.
And so he was known, for folks that don't understand the importance of Giorgio, he was famous for running the Crawdaddy Club, right?
Yeah, he started the Crawdaddy Club in the 60s in New York, in London.
Yeah.
And that's where the Rolling Stones all met, the Yardbirds met.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
So he had the rock and roll DNA when he did bring it to New York, and you and I were talking beforehand about like where music was at the time, that the whole, I guess, CBGB wave of punk and maybe proto new wave stuff was sort of, on its outs. Everything has shifted, sort of LA based production.
Yeah, everything had shifted that way. Also, it was like the peak of the industry. Like the music industry was a real thing because MTV had made this thing, like this huge. It became media. And it was the beginning of that, and the music really was taking a back seat to the media operation that music was turning into. And
so, you guys are creating sort of your own vibe, your experience. I think it's unfortunate if you read about DGeneration, everybody always tries to genreify you, right? Which is I think an offshoot of MTV, an offshoot of the business, where it's like, hey, we've got this package. Here's what you can buy if you buy this particular album, right? I want to get it out there and say glam punk, which is a stupid term in my opinion, right? Because it never fits whoever they try to genreify into it. Like,
and that's the thing is like, it's like punk, I think, was just, you look at pictures of Sid Vicious now and you realize, oh, he's trying to be Bowie, but on a budget,
Right.
It's like,
Bowie on a budget.
it's like, and that's the thing, like that, making everything into neat compartments, and things were coming, the terms were coming up, college rock, alternative, and we just sort of, everyone in DGeneration is really, really smart and just super intelligent. Encyclopedic knowledge is like all the stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, and
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, and I think most bands are that way. A lot, you know, most bands are way, you know, you kind of dumb it down for the image, you know, so
To sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and even the Ramones, you know,
Oh, sure.
so I mean, one of the funniest things I remember, the first I met Rat Scabies, and I was like, "Oh, Rat Scabies, this guy's just going to be like a complete moron."
Right.
And he's like one of the smartest people, and computers, IT, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, just brilliant mind. You know,
Yeah.
it's really funny.
So, but you know, you get kind of genrefied as glam punk because, to me, it's because of the experience of watching a show that you guys would do.
Right.
Right. I mean, you're getting into an experience, and I think the closest thing that you could get to that people wanted to say, okay, it's out of New York, it's punk adjacent, maybe.
Right.
But I think you guys are a straight up rock and roll band. You know, to me, it's not
Right.
something that's like, oh, we're going to, you know, push you toward a Ramones type of sound, or, you know, you talk about the Pistols or whatever. It's not that. Was it because of sort of the New York image that you guys were bringing to things that wasn't sort of LA hair type?
Yeah, I
music
mean, it was
going
just,
on?
it was really, at the time, I mean, like I say, when Howie, when we started the band, Howie had like a beard and like hair down to here.
Yeah.
And I went to his house with a razor blade and cut all his hair off. You know, and it's like, this is you now. And I mean, and it's the same, it's the haircut he had in the 70s when he was in the Blessed. But, you know, it's just like, it wasn't like, but, you know, we wanted to sort of trim everything back. We also were playing with gender a lot. It was the middle of the AIDS crisis, and we had a lot of people that were falling victim to that, and that was a big thing to us. And we were playing with genders, we were playing with makeup, we were and we would, the funny thing is we would swapping clothes too. It's like when we started the band, like I remember like there's clothes that I was wearing that Jesse ended up wearing, and like, you know, Howie ended up wearing. I ended up wearing some of Howie's stuff, and it was just like, it was really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the going on the field trip to buy the shoes. We all went and got the shoes from this girl Danica that worked at, you know, and we were like, it was fun. We were just goofing around, playing around, trying to go against the grain. Because, yeah, I was thinking about it the other day. There was one night where we went out to the Cat Club, and I'd found this, like, really shitty black wig and just put it on and put a bandana over my head like Axl Rose. And Jesse took me out to Cat Club and was introducing me as... I was a kid. He's like, oh yeah, this guy's a glam rocker from Brazil. His name's Axl Rojas, and all the girls were like, oh yeah, son. I was like, oh, see, and just I don't speak English, sorry, you know. And it was just like, and we were just goofing on that. It was just so, yeah. It was just. I mean, and then you were saying like the scene was the cutting edge stuff. Like there were people that were brilliant that were being cutting edge that were getting completely ignored. Like Raging Slab.
Yeah.
You know, it's like now people are like, what the fuck was that?
Right.
You know, and they were like right at the same time as DGeneration, you know, and we were best friends with them.
So it's just sort of hit or miss, you know, as far as who's glomming onto who.
I mean, they get pigeonholed into being like Southern rock, but there was so much more going on with those guys.
And I think that's the misfortune of a lot of bands that get genrefied like that,
Yeah.
because people dismiss it to say, oh, Southern rock, you know,
Right.
it's, you know, rock for hicks or whatever,
Right.
or glam rock, you know, well, we listened to the Dolls
Right.
10 years ago, we know what that's about.
Yeah, and then and you look back at it, and it's like, I mean, look at the Cure. Like, how you can't pigeonhole the Cure. You know, you can say they're goth, but then just it's not really.
It's
just
not
like,
really goth.
Yeah.
It's not really punk. It's
Right.
sort of new wave, but I mean, they changed so much from like that first album
Right.
to, you know.
And that's the thing is at that time, in the 90s, they wanted you squished into this one thing where you were playing four on the floor. And it was just like, and like I say, it was the industry. It was trying to say, well, how do we, you know, make a video that like everybody goes crazy for, and then build a festival around it, and it's going to be like, you know, the Palooza, you know, it's just like, yeah.
Yeah. So you guys, if you watch your live performances and recordings from that time, you guys are joyfully, I think, if you watch it, it looks like you're thumbing your nose at the same time you're having a good time
Yeah,
and
yeah.
performing. You guys get signed,
Right.
You get signed to Chrysalis,
Yeah.
which is, at the time, it was an EMI sort of offshoot. They were trying to remain relevant
Yeah.
and hip at the time.
Yeah, there was a woman, Debbie Southwood Smith, who was the A&R person there that was passionate about us, just literally fell in love with us. And we, she brought us in. But right when things started to take off, there was a massive shakeup. Daniel Glass was the original guy that was running the label. He was out, left, and they brought in this other guy who just was like, absolutely not. This is just didn't get us.
And they dropped you, but that led to a really fun feeding frenzy.
Right.
You know? And I guess you guys eventually ended up on Columbia, I think, for No Lunch, which is another podcast, right?
Yeah,
but you guys get signed to Chrysalis, and you did get to record that first album, self-titled DGeneration, while Chrysalis still, you were in the good graces there with management. You can't find that album. It doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, basically Chrysalis did one pressing of it in the U.S. and when we got dropped, I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't in the I didn't give a shit about the business side of things, and but the band negotiated to get the masters back and have it. And there's a myth that the masters were thrown into the East River. I don't know if that happened or not. Did Danny Sage will say that's what happened to him? But yeah, for whatever reason, they were just disappeared.
That does seem like a very rock and roll thing to do.
Yeah, not necessarily the smartest thing, but very Giorgio Gomelski. I don't know if you know his story.
No.
The first Five Live Yardbirds record.
Right.
He recorded that.
Yeah.
And the multi-tracks, and then one day Gong was in the studio and he was like, oh, well, we've already made this record, and taped Gong over the Five Live Yardbirds multi-track. It's just like, because he was like, yeah, what are we going to do with
Tape's
this?
Tape's expensive, right?
It's like, I need,
So you guys are in the city and you do something that's very New York, right? With this first album. You don't fly to LA like everybody seemed to be doing at the time, right? You go to the Village. Right, and you go to Electric Lady.
Right. Well, yeah.
And the label hooks you up with the late David Bianco, right? Who at that time was, probably doing more engineering than producing.
Mm-hmm. At that point, yeah.
Yeah, at that point. What was that like? Was that a label decision? Did you guys get to sit down and vibe with him a little bit beforehand?
We sat down with a bunch of people.
Yeah. And
David just was. We liked the fact that he worked with. Danzig, that was, we were from, the Howies came up with those guys. He's friends with those guys.
Yeah.
And we liked that the thing I think he'd just done Thunderstruck, the AC/DC.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he did that, and we were huge AC/DC, like sonically, that's something we wanted.
Right.
And he was just a really, just very chill, nice guy, like,
Scotty's asked me to say Rodney
Dangerfield.
Rodney fucking Dangerfield. Yes.
Yeah, I did not know that. That's just news to me.
Yeah.
And that definitely would have been a huge plus to us because, we're big time stand-up guys. I mean, I've been driving around the country. 80% of the time we were listening to is either the Dickies or stand-up comedy, like Chris Rock.
Yeah. Early Chris Rock. Right?
Yeah.
He also did some crazy stuff, and maybe we'll talk about this later. I mean, he produced Creatures of the Night, the Kiss album,
right?
But also Tom Petty,
right?
What was it? Southern Accents, and so, I know there's some Kiss background and history for you guys. We'll chat about a little bit later, but he's got that sort of under his belt. He's not like a guy that's got so many producer credits to his name. You walk into Electric Lady, it's it's iconic in itself, right, for everything that's been recorded there.
Yeah,
and the founding of it.
We
right?
were there because of the Clash. Like,
Oh, yeah?
yeah, London
Yeah.
Calling. It's just
Right.
that's why we wanted to be there, and it's just like, yeah, the place is insane. The Studio A is just nuts. We worked in all 3 rooms there, and it was it's just awesome.
So what's it like to sit down and record? You guys had all been in different bands before. Is this the first time you guys had actually recorded anything together?
Yeah,
or-
yeah. I mean, I think. Yeah, I mean, I know for me it was. Yeah, probably. I mean, I'd worked as an engineer at a studio in Brooklyn before, but it was. I mean, it was like next level.
Yeah, yeah. What are those sessions like? I mean, you guys had songs already written. You'd been performing for a while. You knew what you
Yeah, I
wanted
mean,
to play.
David was fairly hands off with the arrangements and stuff. Kind of let us do our thing. Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, we're looking back, and the other reason that I was really glad that we got to kind of redo. There was more pushing for more aggressiveness and being a little punchier
Yeah.
and stuff. That David sort of was like more laid back and relaxed. And if you listen to that record, it definitely is like a more relaxed versions of like this. I feel like it's just a more chill record. It's like
Yeah.
which isn't to me not necessarily a great thing, but.
No, but it's listenable.
Yeah.
And I think that for a lot of the balance on it is really nice. It's not just overly guitar forward. I love, Scotty and I talk about this all the time. We talk about how records sound, how they've been produced, about the way that, Bianca was famous for, we were talking about this earlier, being relatively flat as far as
Right.
as what you don't hear a whole lot of room.
Right.
We sit
Yeah,
at
and
that-
I could say that's not necessarily of his making. It was just
Yeah.
like something that, like we were talking about Rick Rubin, how
Right.
Rick Rubin just had this thing. It was like no reverbs whatsoever, nothing resonates, nothing.
Right.
Everything is very
Yeah.
dead.
But it's it still has a lot of punch, but it's not so raw that it feels like, okay, this is a punk rock album right off the bat. It's a rock album.
and like I said, the guys in the back. I mean, writing wise, like very just savvy and concerned with hooks.
Yeah.
And just pop music.
Yeah, it's deliciously hooky without being schmaltzy.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's that's the one thing, No Way Out opening up that album is just
Right.
grabs you and says, okay, hold on, this is going to be fun to listen to.
Right.
You guys released that, you recorded in early 94 ish?
Yeah, I'm guessing 93 maybe.
93.
Yeah.
Comes out October 94. You guys are playing around in New York, you're doing a decent amount of touring. The record comes out. What's the reaction to it? Do you remember anybody?
It was weird. Like, like we were like, it's like a critic's choice.
Yeah.
Critics loved it. Other bands loved it. Our heroes, like, a lot of musicians that we know came out of the woodwork and were like, wow, but the industry, like I said, I felt like, they were trying to compartmentalize everything, and they just didn't know what to do with us. And it was just like, yeah, it was just a lot of push and pull of like, which direction should this go in? What should this do? And it was just, I feel like there was just a lot of overthinking.
Yeah,
and stuff.
I think that may be the nature of that era too. Like you had everybody looking for, the answer to grunge, right? What was going to be the next thing that they could sell? What was going to be the next Seattle for?
Yeah, I mean, and that's
still.
the thing. It's hilarious. Like you look back at that era, and like Macy's catalogs had like this is the grunge. Here's the flannel shirt.
Right, here's a flannel shirt you can wear to look like you're from Seattle.
Here's the little baby doll dress that all the cool girls in LA wear.
Exactly.
Just like
the Veruca Salt dress.
Yeah, right. The Veruca Salt dress and the shoes and the.
Yeah.
And which is really funny. Like now I think about it, because we did a Stephen Sprouse spread in Paper Magazine.
Oh yeah,
yeah, because we were like best friends with Sprouse. Like he was just one of our buddies. Like
he's just like, let's get your look out there instead of all this other stuff. So you get that kind of reaction to it. I think that maybe people had a struggle with it at the time because it's a rock album,
right?
And nobody's made just straight up sort of punchy or embrace that recently.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the thing in Jesse. The thing I loved about Jesse, his favorite things are like Fats Domino and Little Richard.
Yeah,
those are just his fundamentals, and that's the records his dad used to play when he was a kid.
Yeah,
and that right hand, that banging away, is always, and pretty much every single DGen song has that bottom end to it.
Yep, and it's underneath everything. So you guys start supporting a lot of acts. We talked about you go on tour and start supporting. You got great war stories, I'm sure. Of
I mean, but there's so many funny things. Like, because I was always really frustrated. Like, I was like, we need to get over to Europe. Like, we need to get, because I'm from the UK originally.
Okay.
And I was like, I really wanted to go to the UK, and I really wanted to go to Europe. I knew Spain would go nuts for us. Germany would go nuts for us. We should have gone to Japan, which never happened.
Right.
But we would, I don't know, like Jesse had this thing, like he can be away from New York for like more than 3 days, really. I mean, we'd go out longer than that, but if we were out for like 30 days, there's a good chance that he's like flying home like every other, if we had a day off. Yeah, he just, whatever.
Some people like that with the city. They don't want to leave. It's like I might have to drive a car or something. It's
but then there was the other things that, like, I mean, we toured a bunch of times with L7.
Okay.
We toured with who are that's Howie going back to the Freaks, which was really tight with them.
Yeah.
We toured with Social Distortion a few times because those guys were just great guys.
Yeah.
We did that. There was the Kiss tour. But then the other thing we'd do is, like we were talking about, you listen to the Dickies, we'd call up the Dickies, and they didn't even have a band at the time. It was just Stan and Leonard, and we'd be like, hey, we're going on a tour. We want to open up for you guys. And they'd be like, oh, God, really? Drag them out of like their self-imposed retirement.
Yeah. But it seems like you guys are able to cross over and support like really, I would say almost drastically different, right? Like,
right.
If you're supporting Kiss, and we talked about how you're kind of a Kiss fan, or you guys like the Kiss experience at least.
Yeah, me no, but
yeah, but other members like Jesse and other members of the band were
liked
Kiss,
but yeah, I mean, I think after that tour, nobody liked Kiss. It was a great experience because I mean, seeing that machine,
but never meet your heroes, right?
Right.
That's it. Yeah. So
I mean, yeah, but watching that machine and watching all the things that can go wrong in that machine was really fucking funny. Yeah, we played in I guess it was Pittsburgh, and all the pyro guys are like acting really weird. We're like, dude, what's going on with you guys? And they're like, it's like, yeah, there's no noise ordinance here. We can do whatever the fuck we want. And I was like, oh no, this is gonna be bad. And I remember, so the first I Want to Rock and Roll come and I just look, all of a sudden it's just like the whole backstage area is just filled with fucking smoke. And
they've blown up the stage.
Peter Criss is like on all fours on stage, like trying to crawl out from under the drum kit, and there's someone running at him with like an oxygen mask, and he's just like,
it's not part of the act.
No. I mean, they had so much pyro, it literally like ate all the oxygen in the building.
So, that's probably drastically different from like the Social Distortion crowd, right? What's, are you see all these different crowds, is the crowd reacting to you the way that, say, New York crowds, did or do, are you?
We played a lot with the Ramones, and that was the roughest. That was the
Yeah.
where, but you know, because like, I mean, it was funny with the Kiss thing because like we would play the Kiss, you'd open up for Kiss, and you'd get out there, and the only people in the seats would be the people that needed help getting in the seats. So there'd be like, you know, this like giant guy in a wheelchair with like his nachos, and throwing his nachos at the stage, like, get off, we want Kiss, and you know, so and then the Ramones. I remember playing City Gardens with the Ramones one time, and like we threw a T-shirt out, and the T-shirt, I see the kids get the T-shirt and kind of like stretch it out, and then this kid like whips out a fucking knife and he just starts cutting up the shirt and throwing it back at us. I was like, whoa, you really don't like us.
Yeah. So love-hate relationship with the Ramones crowd.
Yeah. I mean, they were so young and out of their fucking minds.
Did you guys headline any tours? I mean, is there anything?
No,
where you're
not
up
really.
front?
So we headlined in New York,
Yeah,
you know, a bunch,
yeah.
but we never did a headlining tour. Like we always
okay.
supporting.
Yeah. So you, but you're talking about Europe. You guys never.
I never went to
You never
Europe.
went to Europe.
As soon as the day I quit the band, I swear to God,
They booked
the
a
next
tour.
day they Green Day was like, yeah, come play Europe.
Oh my. God.
And there's a real, yeah, that's another story.
So we may save that for some after hours conversation. You guys end up in. We're laughing about this because a couple interviews that we've had have been with folks who produced really good albums in
Right.
the 90s. And a corollary to all 90s things was the 90s movie soundtrack. Right?
Yeah.
You guys end up on the Airhead soundtrack,
Right.
which is, who is it? Brendan Fraser, and I think Adam Sandler's in it. And it's like, it's a rock band.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And they do some horrible voiceovers. You guys, I think, end up, No Way Out, I think, ends up on the
It's
on
in
the
the
soundtrack.
It's in the closing credits.
In the closing credits. But then there's DGeneration, which is the Reagan Youth.
It's a Reagan Youth. Yeah, it's a Reagan
Yeah.
Youth song that we'd covered it, and somehow I can't even remember how that happened, but it just like then they end up the Cyclone Rangers or end up
Whatever they were called, yeah.
end
Lone
up-
Rangers, that's what they
the Lone Rangers.
Lone
Right? They
Rangers,
end up they're doing it, and it was. I think it was something weird went down with that, and it was like they were trying, and the backing band on that is White Zombie.
Right, it's like Brendan
Yeah.
Fraser and White Zombie.
Yeah.
Which is guaranteed to be Oscar
Right, and
winning
it was just
material.
really funny because like we were really good friends with White Zombie too at the time.
Yeah.
We were just like they.
You toured with those guys, or you just
we never toured with them, but we
wrote.
roaded for them a bunch.
Okay,
yeah.
okay, gotcha.
And my band before that, I had a band called Viva La Wattage. We used to play with White Zombie a lot. And then Bridget from that band went on to do Famous Monsters with Sean from White Zombie.
Right. That's it seems like whenever we get somebody in the studio that's, like I said, been recorded in the 90s, more than likely there's a soundtrack.
Well, yeah, I mean,
song.
like I said, that was
a
the whole
thing,
industry thing.
right?
It was just like it was trying to make,
Because so many movie studios, I think, were probably also on record labels at the time. If you read about DGeneration, you're going to read about Chrysalis, the whole Chrysalis EMI monster that was there.
Right.
You get a change in leadership at Chrysalis, and they basically say, sorry, no mas, right?
Right.
No more assistance, no more coverage. You need to play somebody else besides them, right?
Well, I mean, it's just corporate business anyway.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
Yeah.
It's like, you bring in new leadership, you've got to change everything.
Right.
And so that's what was going on with that. And we, got caught up right in the middle of that. And it was just crazy because we were set with, we had Debbie, we had this great A&R person, and then our friend Mike Schnapp was like a big marketing guy there. And and that just came in, it was just like, it was just nuts, to us. We couldn't understand it. Now looking back,
But you end up in an okay place, though, right? Because
we
think
got
that
dropped and
enough
then
people knew
immediately
about you.
right.
Yeah. So you end up at Columbia.
Yeah.
But bidding war for you guys. It sounds like with
Yeah, I mean, it was, yeah, we were talking to everybody at the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, just Columbia came down hard, and Columbia's a rock solid
Sure.
company.
Yeah.
It's like you've got Bob Dylan, you've got
Right. And you guys end up moving on, recording No Lunch,
Right.
which you can find on
Right.
your favorite streaming
Yeah, yeah.
platforms. I guess the masters didn't get thrown
Those
in
didn't
the
end
East,
up in the river,
the
no.
East River at all. You read about after No Lunch, you toured the hell out of that, right? You
Right.
guys were on the road a lot, supporting that album. What does that do to you after a while?
Well, it's another thing. It's just that like it never really clicked, and we were having and that's like so. No Lunch came out, and it just it didn't really take. Like I said, really wanted to go to Europe. That never happened for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think. Certain people like Jesse and Danny, like they just didn't realize that was out there. And it's funny because Jesse is huge in Europe and goes over there all the time. He's been to Russia, he's been to Australia, and it's funny to me that that just never, the opportunity never arose when I was in the band. I don't know. It's just.
And you leave after No Lunch, is that right?
And not right after, not right away, but the thing that was, we were just miserable. We weren't having any fun anymore. It was like and like I say, certain people in the band were just more caught up in the business side of things, and I really just wanted to just put our heads down and play everywhere, anywhere, for anyone. And we just kind of lost, which is how the band started. Yeah. And it just got away from that. And so I had a catalog of songs that I'd submitted to DGen, and they'd sort of like passed on. And it was like 9-10 songs. Yeah. And I said to the guys, I said, listen, when we started the band, one of the things that there was some thought behind it, and one of the thoughts was that we noticed that all these bands get together and then they just kind of like go off and play with other projects, and it would just get diluted. And I said, if we're going to play together, let's do this for 5 years, and not fuck around with other shit, and not do shit on the side with a girlfriend, and we said we'll do this for 5 years. So what had happened is like we'd hit the 5-year mark. I said, okay, we've done this. I said, I have these songs. You guys don't want to play them. I really want to play them. Is it okay if I just do this side project? As a goof, and I booked it. It was like underneath my apartment, this place, the Lakeside Lounge, a little tiny bar. And I said, yeah, and it's just going to be me and 2 other guys. It's just a 3-piece. My friend Eric playing drums, and another friend of mine, Jim, playing bass. And I said, yeah, I'll just be a goof, And we made these little business cards for flyers, because there used to be these machines in Kinko's, so you could make a business card. And I booked the one show, and I played it, and they all showed up, which I didn't expect. But we played the show, and the next day they were like, hey, man, we have to talk. I was like, okay, what do we need to talk about? This sounds serious. And they were like, you said that was going to be a goof. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, it was a goof.
You still see it as a goof, right? Yeah.
To me, it was a goof. It was, it was just a fun thing. It was just me, it was way more relaxed than DGeneration. It was way easier than DGeneration for me. It was like, and they were like, well, no, that wasn't a goof. And they were like, well, first off, we want those songs back. And I was like, okay, well, no, because you already, I said, I mean, we could work something out. We can work it out, but it's just like, no, I'm not, it's just like, you guys didn't want to do that. And I don't, nobody likes rejection. I knew they were good songs, but there was it was just like, it was just all this kind of ego stuff going on. Yeah. And so they were like, well, you can't do both. You can't do that ever again. I said, you're either going to be with us or with that, and you need to make the decision right now. And I was like, okay, easy. I'm going to do this because this was way more fun, way more relaxed.
Yeah.
And I said, and you guys are being, I think it's being silly. And then they drew up this contract, this whole thing for me to sign that I was never going to be try and start another DGen and it was just they were just so in the business, in the industry, and they'd just completely, gone to that side of things. And then the A&R person concocted this whole other fucking crazy story of me trying to get their contract out from under them, and so just built all this resentment. I had a crazy conversation years later with Jesse. We were driving across Germany. We actually were touring Europe together, and he was telling me all. I was like, holy shit! Like
things you didn't know.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's kind of really great feedback. Like you thought it was a goof,
right?
They knew how serious it could be.
Yeah, definitely, right. And also, like I say, they were so in this echo chamber and so miserable that, I mean, I just wanted to let them know there was a way out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, look, this isn't the end of the world. If you turn your back on this, like, I think you guys need to come with me, maybe. And and go, let's get back to what we were doing in the first place.
A lot more fun on this side.
Yeah. So, and no, it was really funny because I remember I was working in an ice cream shop, and the word got out that I'd left the band, and I looked out and there was a line going out the door, and it was all different people that just wanted to talk to me, like, what? And it was really fucking funny, like.
You leave the band, I guess, things happen, they stick with it for a little bit longer. It disintegrates not immediately after No Lunch.
Yeah, no, I mean, they well, that was the thing. So they were like, what do you if you're going to cut ties with us, you're going to cut ties. So like, what do you need to be out of this deal? And I was like, my rent's due like in 3 days. It's $2,000.
Yeah.
Can I have a check for $2,000 and then we'll call it? And they were just like, what? Like, I mean, and I was literally kind of goofing on them.
Yeah.
I was like, we're going to survive this. We'll get through this. Like all this shit that the fucking management is putting on you, all these conversations, these phone calls we're having every fucking day, they don't mean anything if we're not fucking strapping on guitars and jumping around in front of people. Like that's what we and so I did that, and then like I say, like a week later, Green Day called up and was like, hey, you guys want to tour Europe? And it was just like, motherfucker. Like, but the funny story is with that. So my friend Jack Flanagan was a tour manager. He told me the story. So they get to, I think they were in Cologne or so, wherever it was at the first date of the arena tour with Green Day. And they walk into the arena and Green Day's sound checking, and like Green Day stops playing. And starts playing Capital Offender, like da, 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 da. And the whole band just turns around and walks out. Like they just walk right back out the arena, and Jack's standing there, and they stop and they're like, "What's up?" And goes, "Oh yeah, they don't play that song anymore. That guy's not in the band anymore." And they were like, "That's the whole reason we booked you guys, because we wanted to hear that song."
Turnabout. That's fantastic.
And I was just like, Flanagan called me up. He was like, dude, you're not going to believe what happened today.
That's great. Karmic, right?
Was it, I think 6 years ago, New Year's Eve?
Yeah.
Me and Billy finally got to play it together.
That's fun.
There's a video on YouTube of us doing it.
We'll have to track that down.
Yeah, it's Clem Burke on drums.
Wow.
Billy. I think Johnny Paisano's on bass. Yeah, it's nuts. And I look over at Billy when we're about to play, and he's all nervous. I'm like, what's the matter? He goes, I'm so excited. I'm so nervous. I'm like, shut the fuck up.
Billy's fanboying on you. That's fantastic. But you guys have played again, right?
Yeah, they needed a guitar player, and they were like, hey, can you do it? And I was like, sure,
Yeah.
I mean, there was never any really bad blood.
That's great.
That's the thing. And so, yeah. But they had to do some mental gymnastics to kind of deal with me coming back, and it's just like, I mean, thankfully, like I said, we had that guy Jack Flanagan, who was the tour manager, who kind of like worked as the liaison, and like, yeah. But yeah, and then we after that, whenever I was pretty much like kind of back in the band.
Yeah.
For all the reunion stuff. And
you guys, though, played a series of reunion shows in 2008.
Right.
What led up to that?
Yeah, I think probably in part to Jesse's sort of becoming more successful at that point too. He was having, so we were like, the guys in the band sort of wanted to ride on the coattails of that a little bit.
But how do you ease back into that situation? Had you played enough with each other periodically since that it felt okay to you, or?
Well, I mean, it's like I say, not bad blood, but I wouldn't say the band is like one of the. Got very intense people, very smart people, and being in that band is exhausting. And it's funny because like I work with Jesse, I've toured with Jesse and solo and stuff, and the minute it becomes DGeneration, Jesse just turns into a complete asshole. And I think I probably do too. Okay. I think we all do. It's just this crazy energy, and and you hear about like the Replacements and the Kinks, and like you just get these clashes, and if you don't have that static, you don't have that thing. But it's just tremendously toxic, and yeah, we all fuck with each other so hard that's what kind of makes it great, and it's exhausting.
But it's an endurance event to do.
Yeah.
Well, you are, besides, playing together DGeneration off and on, we still need to talk about what you're doing now. Because you're still playing music with Luckiest Girls. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing now.
It's funny because we played for the first time in a while. I don't even want to think about how long it's been since we have played. But we got off stage and the drummer goes, yeah, man, it's like we're coming up on 19 years doing this. And I'm like, what? Like, how is that fucking possible?
Yeah.
And it's just, like I say, it's pretty much those same songs that I played the Lakeside Lounge. That's the core of the set.
Yeah.
I released a record with a company called Sue out in Minnesota. My buddy Ryan put it out, and we put out vinyl. But those songs have been knocking about forever. Like
things that I need to ask you about, the mystery Ryan Adams recordings. You guys.
Yeah, we
supposedly recorded something.
Yeah, we
2010ish, 2011ish.
Yeah, we went out to LA and tracked it, and it just completely just went sideways and just fizzled out. I thought it was really pretty cool because he definitely got us to loosen up a lot more than we'd ever done before in the studio.
Yeah.
It's you're talking about like that toxicity that happens between us.
Yeah.
And then having him involved as well. Like,
okay.
So it was just like, and so that was a really high pressure thing. Great studio, great space. Yeah, we tracked everything, and then we listening back to the final mixes. Some of the guys, I don't know, just didn't seem as enthusiastic as he wanted, and he just was like, "Fuck this."
Yeah.
This is not happening.
They exist, but probably never.
I don't think it even exists. I think
really?
We never really, we never really mastered it down. We never really properly mixed it. It got mixed down to like a 2-track that was kind of falling apart at the time, but it never really made it.
Okay.
Which sucks because there was some interesting stuff on there.
People were stoked.
Jesse and Ryan have done some great work together. I mean, the finger and all that stuff. I mean, I think it's the thing. There's an insecurity thing going on with some of the guys in the band, and it's like I think they have these unrealistic expectations, which in some ways was good because I would have gone and recorded anywhere, but because of their insecurities, we ended up at Electric Lady and working with Rick Ocasek, and stuff like that. So. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I have a background in engineering and stuff, and it's like, people just think there's some kind of magic that happens, and it's like, and it just doesn't. It's just you've got to get.
There's a lot of craft.
If it's not there, it's not there.
Yeah.
You can't fabricate it. You can't fix it in the mix. You can't, And I think that was the thing is like, because Ryan and us were all on such a level playing field. I think some of the guys in the band just they wanted some validation from somebody else, a higher power or something, to say, "Oh yeah, this is great," but they don't trust their ears.
Yeah. There's a lot of folks that were or are stoked that if it's vaulted somewhere.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't exist. Because I remember looking at the 2-track as we were mixing it down and just seeing that first oxide just coming off. I was like, oh, okay.
Puff. I have to ask you about working with Rick Ocasek. I'm married to a huge Cars fan.
Right.
And not only being sort of... probably the king of all sort of whatever the Cars were, new wave, genius that it was.
Right.
Great producer. What was it like working with him on No Lunch?
He and I was a huge I am a huge Cars fan.
Yeah.
But we immediately butted heads. It was just the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
And like I say, as far as like toxicity and the stuff that we did, it's like that kind of like became a thing that was, it was kind of a cool thing. I was like, yeah. And the first day we're in the studio, I'm in the lounge, and I've got like a non-alcoholic beer, and I'm just like pounding it. And he looks in the room and just goes and goes, "Yeah, tell him to go home for the day." He thought it was a real beer.
Oh.
So, and I knew that he didn't know, I knew that he and he was like, "Yeah, that's not going to happen. We're not going to have that, And so, of course, I walk out of Electric Lady, go right next door to the bar, and immediately start slamming shots. And he's like, "Oh," so then I get a phone call. I was like, "Oh, Rick didn't realize it was non-alcoholic beer." I'm like, "Well, that's fine. He wants you to come back." I said, "Well, I'm kind of half in the bag now. I don't think that's such a great idea." And it just progressed from there. Like, then Rick wanted, Waiting for the Next Big Parade, that he rearranged that, and which I think, is that on the first album? Is that on is Parade on the first album? Yeah, so it's like you can hear the two different arrangements.
Yeah.
And I was dead set against that, and we butted heads over that.
You don't hear, I don't know, maybe it's a driving force behind the music and the sound of No Lunch, but you don't hear that sort of like headbutting with the
No,
producer
I mean,
necessarily.
it was professional. I mean, and like, that was the great thing. The thing I love about that record is the vocals, the background vocals, that just layers and layers and layers.
Yeah.
Because he came up and we would talk about Roy Thomas Baker, and all the Queen stuff, and like just those, and it's the first thing I listen for when I see any band. It's like, if there's no background vocals, I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, that's kind of like a thing that people just don't even notice. Right.
But it is, it's thicker. Right.
Yeah,
it's definitely
and it drives those hooks, and it's just a whole other thing that I think a lot of bands just don't capitalize on, and especially now, so many people are working, in YouTube world. It's like they don't understand.
They're making content; they're not making music necessarily. Right. Yeah, that's a theme here in the Sandwich Shop. We talk about that a lot. Yeah. Well, Richard Bacchus, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having
this has
me.
been fun. Thanks for making the drive through the snowpocalypse.
Yeah.
So we'll hope to have you back in. Maybe if you got other stuff that other projects you want to talk about in the future, we'd love to chat with you again.
Yeah, it was
thanks
great
a lot.
Fun. Thank you.
Good times. All right.
Cheers.
Hi guys, thanks for listening to Public Access Punks. For more bonus content, check us out on Patreon. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you like what you've heard, leave us a comment. It helps us out.